Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Chaotic Entertainment. I'm your host, Dan, and I'd like you all to meet a dear friend of mine, Jim Oldman. Today, I'll be subjecting Jim to everyone's favorite way to play Project Zomboid, the CDDA challenge. But first, who is Jim Oldman? Jim Oldman is a 63-year-old Vietnam veteran. He's nearsighted and riddled with crippling PTSD, but that hasn't kept him from being handy around the house. It also hasn't kept him from burning his home down and jamming shards of glass in his crotch. Jim is naked, drunk, sick with a nasty cold, and bleeding profusely from his dangly bits.
With slices of Johnson.
This is easily the second worst day of Jim's life, the first being when his wife took the kids. And somehow, Jim managed to miss that the zombie apocalypse was happening in his front yard. Now, you may find this surprising, but this isn't the first time Jim has tried to survive this challenge. I had to go through quite a few gyms before I found one that could move his old bones fast enough to not get eaten, or die from getting lit on fire. Now, surviving this challenge isn't exactly easy. Luckily for Jim, we have the CDDA guide for zombie survival at our disposal. Step 1. Murder the nearest moving creature and steal its clothes, and that's it. Maybe try to seek shelter afterwards or something, I don't know. You're bleeding from the dick, Jim. This is out of my area of expertise. I sent Jim inside to get out of the cold and away from the neighbors, only for the zombies to climb in after him. Somehow, Jim won the fight with only a scratch and a bruised ego. I sent him off to the bathroom so we could evaluate his situation. We needed to stop that bleeding immediately. Luckily, we found a pair of tweezers and a whole curtain we could use. In the midst of a forest fire, while drunk and surrounded by zombies, Jim pulled the glass out of his scrotum and wrapped a wet cloth around it. The house was under siege the entire time, and I had no idea where all the zombies were. All I knew was the bathroom door was being pounded on, the window was opened, and the old man dove the fuck out. Jim limped his way through the trees to a nearby fence. Fun fact, Jim was homeless when he came back from Nam. He learned skills in the streets of Louisville that never really left him. For example, watch as he stomps a man to death for his shoes and his watch. Remember, kids, it's not grave robbing if they're not buried when you loot them. After committing a little casual homicide, Jim took off into the woods. There was an old farmhouse to the northeast that he could hide in. If I could just get him away from the horde, I could start working on everything wrong with Mr. Oldman. Physically, I mean. No amount of weed or state-funded neglect is going to cure his countless mental illnesses. He limped past a campsite and made it to the house. A meat cleaver, canned food, no medical supplies. The tool shed was an absolute treasure hoard, though. Not only did Jim find a hammer and saw, but he also found a shovel. Back in the house, Jim discovered that he wasn't alone. His shiny new farmhouse had a few tenants in it. Jim's pretty new to this whole landlord thing, but he's got that whole give me rent or give me your kneecaps thing down to a science. You know what's more impressive than killing 2 zombies with a shovel? Carrying those same zombies down a flight of stairs while bleeding from the testicles. I black out if I stub my toe too hard, but Jim's a trooper. Even with more moodles than I've ever seen at one time, he still has the drive to cover up his murders. Dedication, folks. You don't see that too often these days. Also, did you know that in monster movies, anyone who's out camping typically dies first? Jim knows. That's the natural order of things, and he was gonna make sure it fucking stayed that way. His latest victims dropped new backpacks, loads of snacks, beer, and bourbon. The CDDA challenge is notoriously hard because of the lack of loot, and Jim's out here getting fully equipped on the first day. Good thing, too, because half the food in the house can't be opened without a can opener. Jim has a knife and a screwdriver, but not enough brain cells to force open a goddamn can. I've never Googled the side effects of Agent Orange, but I'm not sure a room temperature IQ is one of them. After salvaging the campsite, Jim decided to take a quick peek at that wound of his. The thing that I was most worried about had happened. Gangrenous genitals are a setback at the best of times. This isn't the first time Jim's had an infection in his crotch, but it's definitely the most inconvenient. I disinfected it, not that it mattered much. Without stitches, it was just going to keep getting worse. Jim needed real medical supplies. He could only keep wrapping his groin with other people's socks for so long. With the wound cleaned and the area cleared of threats, Jim took some Vicodin and went to sleep. He had a big day ahead of him tomorrow. In the morning, Jim made a spear to protect himself. You never know when some strange homeless man might try and shank you for your belt. And when they do, they probably look a lot like Jim. The old man limped his way to a clearing and found a small group of the undead loitering in the woods. A group like this is usually an easy fight. But when you have osteoporosis, an infected crotch, and child support payments for kids you haven't seen in 15 years, things get a little harder. The spear, which I made with a table leg and a dull knife, somehow broke. Luckily, Jim has a shovel, and now he has a jacket and a digital watch. I sent Jim deeper into the woods. There's a really nice house with a solid fence around this area. With any luck, there'd be some decent medical supplies in there. Or a belt. Honestly, I'd settle for either. I spotted the fence as well as a few of the shambling dead. I was so busy watching them that I didn't realize I was marching Jim face first into a gang of zombies. I thought it was just one. It was not. It was not just one. Jim's shovel had the nerve to betray us when we needed it most. In the saddest display I've ever seen, I watched Jim sprint hobble through the woods back to the farmhouse. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Dan, won't that just lead the zombies back to Jim's house? So I got Jim home and broke his cleaver on a few more spears. Afterwards, I decided to send Jim out to level the best skill in the game, foraging. It's not the best skill in the game, but it makes low food challenges way easier. Sticks aren't food, but if you find enough of them, eventually you get to start finding berries. They're almost definitely poisonous, but if you toss them in a bowl, they're totally safe. Jim doesn't have a bowl, mind you. He lost it in the fire, along with his can opener and what little dignity he had. I'm not saying I'd be ashamed if I had to limp my naked ass out of my burning house with glass in my junk. I'm just saying that maybe dying wasn't such a bad alternative. The zombies from earlier found Jim rummaging in the fields. If Jim wasn't limping, I'd almost prefer to just lead them away instead of risk breaking more of his weapons. As it stands, however, Jim can't kite them very far without running. After feeling around in the bushes, I sent Jim back into the trees. Our hero broke his spear on the first zombie he bumped into. That's fine, he brought a spare. There was a police zombie with a pistol. He broke Jim's spear with his face like the selfish prick that he was. To make matters worse, his friends heard the commotion. It's hard to rifle through a dead guy's pockets when his friends are trying to eat you. At least Jim found a new pair of reading glasses. Jim cleared the horde and discovered the police zombie wasn't an enemy, he was a big bag of loot. Body armor, the pistol, a double holster, worth every moment of struggle. I mean, that pistol will almost definitely get Jim killed if he so much as looks at it. But that's a problem for later. Back at the house, Jim took a break while I weighed my options. I could keep trying to send him south toward town where there was absolutely great loot, but endless waves of zombies. He could wander off in a random direction and see where that would take him for better or worse, or I could send him northwest to a safe haven that's kept countless Zomboid survivors safe. I went with option 3. The forests in Project Zomboid are pretty safe for the most part. Even with the high population setting, you're not likely to bump into anyone out in the trees. The main road, however, that's a different story. Yeah, Jim almost died there. That's a lot. Imagine the smell coming off of that, like an esports player's bedroom. Thankfully, the zombies are a lot like most of the problems in your sad, miserable life. If you just ignore them, they'll go away on their own. Jim made a quick pit stop at the radio tower. There wasn't really much there. I found a dress inside the maintenance closet. That's weird. Just gonna leave that there. He took a quick nap in the chair, and then it was back to walking. Well, limping. After a few hours of stumbling through the trees, I saw it. The cabin. All it needed was the eviction of its residents. The best thing about this place is the well, but the radio's also really important. To my knowledge, the helicopter event still happens in this mode, meaning if Jim gets caught outside, he'll be completely fucked. For every house or building, there's somewhere between 3 to 20 zombies. Having all the ones in the surrounding area lock in on Jim is literally the worst thing that could happen right now. The spinny metal bird is more of a pressing issue than the bacteria currently devouring his reproductive system. If I was going to keep him safe, I needed more supplies. Namely something to cover the windows with. Jim was exhausted from the hike to the cabin though, so I made him read a book and pass out. We had stuff to do, and I needed him rested to do it. In the meantime, though, that's all the time I have for this episode. Thank you all for watching. It's great to see Jim make a return to the channel. I've never made it real far in this challenge, so I'm excited to see how far I can push Jim's luck. A huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. You guys are the stitches that should be holding together Jim's decaying crotch. More content on the way, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all again, and I'll see you all next time.